So you're looking to buy a grain mill, but you're a little overwhelmed with all the decisions out there. Well, stay tuned because in this video, I'm going to be walking you through a good thought process on how to choose a grain mill that is right for you. Hey everyone, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. If you've been with me for a while, you can see that I have missed a few uploads due to some family things going on. Everything's fine, but I really appreciate y'all being patient with me. Y'all are absolutely amazing. One question that I hear a lot and get a lot and understand is how to buy a grain mill. So you're ready to start milling your grains, and now you get to choose a grain mill. And I'm talking more about an electric grain mill, not a hand cranked grain mill. So I did actually do a review of a manual hand cranked grain mill. I will link that below if you were interested in a review of one of those. But in this video, we're going to be talking about electric grain mills because after all, they're very convenient to have, and it's definitely something that I started off with. So in this video, I'm going to first talk to you about options that you can use if you don't have an electric grain mill right now. There are some options available, so you can still be milling your own wheat. I'm then going to be second thing I'm going to talk about is the different types of grain mills, what the differences are between them. I am going to be talking about the most popular and common ones that are out on the market today. I'm going to talk to you about the differences between ones, and then finally I'm going to talk to you about questions that you need to be asking yourself to help you determine which mill is best for you. All right, so real quick, if you have noticed something different, that's because I'm on location. This is not my kitchen, y'all. I'm having to film this on the go so I can get these videos out to you. But I wanted to tell you a huge, amazing announcement is coming up next week. If you're on my newsletter, if you're already on my email list, I'm getting my weekly newsletter. I've sent 2 emails out about this announcement already, but if you would like to be included in knowing first about this special announcement coming up next week, then link below to go ahead and just sign up to be notified first. But otherwise, all the rest of you will definitely be hearing it next week as well. I'm really excited about this announcement, so sign up below to hear about it. First of all, options, if you just don't have an electric grain mill or not able to get one right now, there are 2 options available for you. One is that if you have a very powerful blender, like a Vitamix or a Blend, I believe a Blendtec will probably work as well. Now these are powerful blenders, not your El Cheapo ones from Walmart or Dollar General or whatever. So if you do have one of these powerful blenders, I will link the one that I have down below. I actually have a Vitamix. It's as old as the hills, but it still works great. They're great blenders to have. But if you have these actually do mill your own wheat. Now you can only do like a cup at a time. I wouldn't do any more than that, maybe even a half cup. So it does take longer, but it gets the job done. You'll have fine flour in no time. Another option that you have besides a blender is if you have a KitchenAid mixer, do know that there's an attachment that you can put on the KitchenAid mixer that I know many people have done with success. The only, I would say, quote, downsides to that is I've been told it is a little bit slower than your typical grain mill, electric grain mill. There's no, any sort of hopper or bowl to catch it in. I think it's a little bit more messy. It doesn't hold a lot of grains, things like that. But that is an option for you. But if I remember right, and I'll have to get the prices, I'll probably put it here below whenever I see it. I mean, it's almost the price of an actual electric grain mill, and I do suggest getting a separate electric grain mill just to be more efficient. All right, so those are options if you do not have or cannot get right now an actual electric grain mill. Now we're going to talk about the different types of models out there. And there's basically 2 types of models that, or categories I should say, that these electric grain mills fall in. The first one is impact mills, and then the second one is your stone grind mills. So your impact mills have the steel mechanism on the inside that basically spins super duper fast, that whenever the grains are then impacted by the steel inside the motor, it basically the grains burst, and that's what creates the fine flour. The most popular impact mill on the market is the Nutrimill Classic, and also the Wondermill, which I actually started off with the Wondermill. When I started milling my grains 10 years ago, that is the mill that I started out with, and I really love it. It's really great. The second type is the stone grind mills, and these are exactly as it says in the name, it's actually two millstones, like old school type millstones, how people have been milling wheat for thousands of years. Actual millstones, they're usually about this big, and there's two of them in these electric grain mills. And these actually are milling the stone. So you're kind of getting the old school, what they've been doing for thousands of years type of grain mill, but in electric form. So it is way easier on the muscles. The most popular stone grind mills are the Mock Mill, of course. Many of y'all have that. The Nutrimill Harvest, which is a stone grind mill that I have, and I did a full review of the Nutrimill Harvest, and I'll link that below for you guys. And then also the Como Mill are kind of the three most popular types of stone grind mills. So there you have it. So again, you first have to decide whether you want an impact mill or stone grind mill. And again, impact mills are the Wondermill and the Nutrimill Classic. The popular stone grind mills are the Mock Mill, the Nutrimill Harvest, and the Como Mill. And all of these grain mills I will definitely be linking below. Now let's get into the differences between the impact mills and the stone grind mills, because there definitely are kind of big differences between them. Now, as I stated, I started off with the Wondermill Classic, I started off with the Wondermill. I had her, Miss Wanda, I still have her for years. She has done wonderful. She is a workhorse, and I really, really love her. I was then given a Nutrimill Harvest several months ago for review, which again I did below. That is a stone grind mill. And so now I've actually had several months of using a stone grind mill versus the impact mill, and I've noticed quite a few differences. So first, let's talk about your impact mills. I've already described what the impact mill does, and generally with the impact mills, from what I've discovered, is they only do really like fine flour. So the impact mills will get you fine flour in a very quick amount of time. They have very high speed motors, usually around the 1500 watt motors, where your stone grind mills are typically lower. But they will make you a lot of fine flour pretty quickly. Their hoppers where you put the grains in typically are bigger. And with the Nutrimill and the Wondermill, they do have a container that the flour goes in that comes with it. So now let's talk about the stone grind mills. The stone grind mills, whether the Mock Mill, the Nutrimill Harvest, or the Como Mill, typically have a lower motor. Instead of the 1500 watt-ish like the impact mills, the stone grind mills typically have around the 450 watt motor capacity. So use electricity. It will take longer to mill your grains. They are not as fast as your impact mills. Now, one great thing about your stone mills is that you actually do have multiple settings. You can do fine flour all the way to cracked grains and all the places in between. So you do have more variety with your how fine or coarse your flour is with your stone grind mills that you don't necessarily have with your impact mills. Also, typically with your stone grind mills, they do not come with any sort of container for your flour to come in, so you do have to provide that on your own. All right, so those are the biggest differences. Now let's talk about some questions that you need to ask yourself and consider when you're wanting to choose between these mills. And then I'm going to talk to you about the key differences on my mills that I have and which one I like to use for what purposes. First of all, the biggest question you need to ask yourself is, how much baking do you plan on doing? Do you have a large family? Are you running a business? Do you have, are you going to be milling a lot of flour, so you want to mill a lot in a short amount of time? Then the impact mill, an impact mill like the Wondermill or Nutrimill Classic may be the way to go, because it is going to do a lot of flour, fine flour, much faster than your stone grind mills. It also contains more space for your wheat berries to go in, so you don't have to keep filling it up, things like that. So if you're looking at possibly time saving because you're using a lot of flour, an impact mill may be what you want to choose. Now, with that being said, I do know that the Mock Mill has more of a professional grade stone grind mill, but that is way more expensive than your typical impact or even stone grind mill. Usually you're looking around $300 to $350 that you're looking at spending on an electric grain mill, and these mock mill stone mills that are more for professionals are around like the $700 mark. So if you still want a stone grind mill, but you need to spit out a lot of flour for more professional reasons, then you may want to look at the extra money it is to get the upgraded mock mill stone mill. The second question that you need to consider is how much space you have. Do you know that typically the impact mills are a bit bigger, especially the Wondermill, because it has where the container that the berries grind in, and then next to it is the flour container. So that actually takes a bit more space. Now when you're done, you can stack it on top of each other, but that makes it kind of tall. The Nutrimill Classic does have its flour container that slides into the mill. So the motor that grinds all the berries are above the container. So that saves a little space, but it's still fairly large. Your stone mills are typically going to be a bit smaller. My Nutrimill Harvest definitely takes up a little less counter space than my Wondermill. So that's something to consider as well, is your space. A third thing that you may be considering is, does aesthetics mean, are aesthetics a big deal to you? Do you want your mill to be pretty? As far as the prettiest mill, I actually have, like I said, the Nutrimill Harvest and the Como mill. Both have a very pretty bamboo wood grain look to them, where the other mills, including the mock mill, stone grind mill, have a bit more of that industrial, obviously a kitchen appliance look to them. So if that's important to you, you want to look at the Nutrimill Harvest or the Como mill for that wood look. Their mock mill also has a wood look to it, but it is considerably more expensive than their standard look. Fourth one is, do you want to have the option of more than just fine flour? If you do not care and you only see yourself ever using fine flour, then impact mill will be perfectly fine, because that's what you're going to get. Where your stone grind mills give you more options for cracked grains. So if you're considering things like animal feed or grits, those type of things, you're going to need a stone mill in order to adjust the fineness of your flour. So again, the impact mills, they are only producing fine flour, just in my experience, where your stone mills give you the huge variety from fine flour all the way to just simple cracked grains and beans. All right, so the fifth thing to consider, and this is purely my opinion, because again, I have experience with both the Wondermill and also the Nutrimill Harvest, which is a stone mill. The biggest difference is, do you want a mill that is kind of more no fuss, low maintenance kind of thing? Because a huge thing that I notice with my Wondermill is that I just flip on a button and every single time I get the same fine flour. Where with a stone grind mill, I'm constantly having to make sure that the stones are adjusted to the fineness or the coarseness that I'm wanting. So if you kind of have to mess with it each time. And that's why sometimes I have heard I've heard comments from people that mention that their stone mills are not grinding fine enough because it's possible that they have not figured out the adjustment settings on their mill. So there is a bit of a learning curve with your stone mills, where with your impact mills, it's push a button and poof, you have fine flour. For me, what I've learned the difference between the Nutrimill Harvest stone mill and my Wondermill impact mill is they're both great mills. Honestly, if you get any of these electric grain mills, you're going to be fine. They're going to get you freshly milled bread, good freshly milled bread every single time. One huge objection I see to the impact mills as opposed to the stone grind mills is they state that impact mills heat your flour up higher, where it's killing some of the nutrients. In my personal experience, I do not notice a difference because I've touched the flour soon after milling both times, and there's not a huge difference. And even if you go to the website of the Wondermill and the Nutrimill Classic, they both state that they do not heat the flour up so high where it's killing off any nutrients. So when I want to use my Nutrimill Harvest, I typically use that for my everyday bread baking. It works just fine for my everyday needs. I am baking now 3 loaves about every 2 days. So I mill my flour a lot. And even though it is a bit slower in my Nutrimill Harvest, it still gets the job done. I do still like it. Now, I do want to pull out my Wondermill whenever I'm baking tons and tons of bread to sell, because it is faster. It saves me time because I'm able to just dump my grains in, and a lot of them at once. I can mill pretty much all the flour I need for definitely 2 loaves of bread in one sitting. Where with my Nutrimill Harvest, the stone mill, I do have to refill the wheat berries a few times. So it's just a time thing. It's not adding that much time to me, but it doesn't feel as efficient as whenever I'm using my Wondermill. I also really miss having the dedicated container for my Wondermill. With my stone mill, I definitely have to always find a container to use it. I still have yet to find a dedicated one that I can just keep with it, so I'm constantly just grabbing whatever bowl that I can find to contain my flour. So those are a few things with that. Again, they're both excellent mills. All of these mills are excellent mills. I recommend all of them. The people I've heard who use them love them. I've never really heard complaints, except for just these differences. It really is just preference. So again, I will link all of these grain mills down below. Do know that I have received word from Pleasant Hill Grain, which is where a lot of these are linked to, that some of their products are going to be having price increases soon. We all know, due to inflation, blah, blah, blah. So this is something you may want to go ahead and invest in before prices start rising. So hopefully this was helpful for you. As always, if you have any more questions, if I didn't cover something, ask me in the comments below, and I'm there to answer your questions. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.